Frequency Unknown. Frequency Unknown is a studio album released under the name Queensrÿche. It was released by Geoff Tate's temporary version of the band before a settlement determined that only the other band members were entitled to use the name Queensrÿche. The album was released on Cleopatra Records' sublabel, Deadline Music. It was co-written and originally produced and mixed by Jason Slater, who has previously also produced Queensrÿche's albums Operation, Mindcrime Roman II 2006, American Soldier 2009 and Dedicated, Chaos 2011. It was revealed to the public on April 28, 2014, that Geoff Tate lost the rights to the Queensrÿche trademark. After the settlement was announced, Tate changed the name of his version of Queensrÿche to Operation, Mindcrime. Background: Queensrÿche's 12th album, Dedicated to Chaos, was released in 2011 to a mixed reception, with some critics giving positive reviews and others panning the album due to great stylistic differences to previous albums. Furthermore, it became apparent that there were tensions between lead vocalist Geoff Tate and the rest of the band. These tensions openly manifested themselves at a concert on April 14, 2012 in São Paulo, Brazil, when Tate, who was irate over the firing of his wife and stepdaughter as the band's manager and fan club manager, respectively, allegedly physically assaulted and spat on drummer Scott Rockenfield and guitarist Michael Wilton. After hoping to reconcile with Tate, the other founding members Rockenfield, Wilton, and bassist Eddie Jackson decided to fire him. Meanwhile, Jackson, Rockenfield, Wilton, and guitarist Parker Lundgren had been working with another vocalist, Todd LaTorra, under the name Rising West, playing material from the first 5 Queensrÿche albums. Following Tate's expulsion from the band, LaTorra was officially announced as Tate's replacement. Tate subsequently filed a preliminary injunction lawsuit, disputing ownership of the band name, that resulted in a verdict that both Tate and the other band members were allowed to use the band name until the next court date, scheduled for November 2013. Tate subsequently started his own version of the band featuring former Queensrÿche guitarist and producer Kelly Gray, guitarist Glenn Drover Idolin, King Diamond, Megadeth, bassist Ruddy Sarzo Blue Oyster Cult, Ozzy Osbourne, Quiet Riot, Whitesnake, drummer Bobby Blotzer Rat, and keyboardist Randy Gain. Drover was later replaced by Robert Sarzo and Blotzer with Simon Wright AC/DC, DO. Tate's band went on an Operation Mindcrime anniversary tour and lost the name Queensrÿche to the other remaining band members in April 2014. Title and artwork. The title, release date, track listing, and artwork of the album were announced on March 4, 2013, a few hours after the original Queensrÿche, with Todd LaTorra on vocals, announced the release date of their album, Queensrÿche. A press release states that FU might be perceived as a fitting tribute and salutation, and later clarifies, coincidental abbreviation, unlikely. The abbreviation FU is further emphasized on the album artwork. The letters are often used in English as a euphemism for the profane expression "fuck you." Todd LaTorra, the frontman of Queensrÿche in Tate's place, feels that the artwork is below the belt and said that subliminal insults are not what Queensrÿche was about, further emphasizing by saying when one talks about devaluing the name or the brand of Queensrÿche, it's so obvious that when you're putting a fist with an FU in a clever way to say that's frequency on came first, he said. I've been trying to come up with an answer for that because I knew I would be asked. I haven't really come up with one yet. When Eddie Trunk inquired about the FU initials being aimed towards his former bandmates, Tate responded, "Oh gosh, people read so much into everything. It's kind of funny, isn't it?" In later interviews, Tate did explain the title. In May 2013, he said, "When you are making music and you are putting a song together, you have all these different parts that are supposed to work together. Sometimes when you are listening back to it, some things doesn't click. There is a theory in the engineering world If you dial in these unknown frequencies, nobody knows what it is. You find the weak spot of the song. Later, he called it. The fist on the album cover would originally be Tate's own fist, but a different hand model was used because Tate wanted a more masculine-looking fist with hair on the knuckles. Songs. The album includes 10 original songs and 4 bonus tracks. The song Give It To You appeared on an earlier track listing as When Lightning Strikes. The bonus tracks are re-recordings of 4 of Queensrÿche's greatest hits. Tate said that he was motivated to remake the 4 hits due to the money they would earn by doing so. He also said they wanted them to sound, as close as we could make them to the originals. And that's what was really hard, was making them sound that way. Tate initially wanted to do reinterpretations of the songs with different arrangements, but Cleopatra Records allegedly did not allow this. Cold was released on March 3, 2013 via iTunes as the first single off Frequency Unknown. It was also released as a special limited edition 7 vinyl single with the re-recorded version of Silent Lucidity on the B-side. On April 15, 2013, Cleopatra Records made the entire album available for streaming on SoundCloud, but these were removed by midnight. Ultimate Guitar Archive asserts that the predominantly negative reactions to the recordings may have prompted the label to pull the album stream. Subject matter in the album's lyrics include relationships cold, life without you and everything, standing up for oneself dare, the idea that everyone is a slave, the mindset of a terrorist in the hands of God, dealing with rape and violence running backwards, addiction fallen, mortality the weight of the world. Also, Geoff Tate has described Give It To You as a jam song. Randy Gain wrote The Weight of the World in response to suffering a heart attack on December 26, 2012, explaining, "That was a very difficult piece to produce and to arrange cause I was going through some recouping, and that song was quite autobiographical for me." Rockenfield, the drummer of Queensrÿche, said in May that he had heard several parts of the album. Writing and recording. Frequency Unknown was recorded at the ND Studios in Sunnyvale. CAN was created in the short time span of 6 weeks, which Tate explains was due to wanting to get it done to coincide with the tour dates, and have an album and a tour at the same time. Tate said that the writing process started out with a group of core writers, and we wrote a bunch of songs, and then we had invites out to a lot of different people to play on it. This writing team was composed of 4 members: Tate, Slater, Lucas Rossi, and Gain. Additionally, Martin Irigoyen and Chris Cox were credited. Tate had met Rossi during the Shiprock tour of 2012. "We were having a couple of drinks talking music, and the next thing I know we're back at the hotel writing songs." The album has many in-studio guest appearances by musicians outside of Geoff Tate's version of Queensrÿche. According to Tate, the idea of having guest appearances evolved from the time constraints we had imposed on the project. Later, he did comment that it was really fun from an artistic standpoint, but from a logistics standpoint, it's like a nightmare due to scheduling these musicians. Guitar solos from musicians outside of the band and production team were contributed by K. Downing, Chris Poland, Ty Tabor, Brad Gillies, Dave Menachti, and Chris Canella. These musicians were brought into the studio on the same day and at the same time, except for K. Downing, who was in England and sent his Materai to Tate via the internet. Nina Moore sung backing vocals on the re-recorded version of Jet City Woman. Tate's daughter Emily and stepdaughter Miranda sang backing vocals on the re-recorded version of Silent Lucidity. Articles on Blabbermouth. Outside of the guest appearances, the album predominantly makes use of session musicians rather than the official members of the band. The guitars, bass, and drums on all 4 re-recordings were performed by Martin Irigoyen. Craig Locicero plays the rhythm guitar tracks on all 10 original tracks. Paul Bostaff and Evan Bautista each played drums on 4 tracks, and Slater played bass on 6 tracks, keyboards on 2 tracks, and performed theremin solo on 1 track. Of the official members, Tate sung vocals on all tracks, Randy Gain performed keyboards on 6 tracks, bass on 1 track, and provided the orchestration for 1 re-recording. Ruddy Sarzo played bass on 3 tracks, Simon Wright performed drums on 1 track, and Kelly Gray and Robert Sarzo each played a guitar solo on 1 track. Mixing. The album was produced and mixed by Slater, who sent the mixed recordings on February 28, 2013 to Mayor Appelbaum to be mastered. Samples of all songs became available for streaming through iTunes and Amazon on March 13, 2013. However, a controversy surrounding the album's mixing arose when Billy Sherwood announced that he would be remixing the album, saying that it seems there are sonic issues with the previous versions. This message went viral, following which Deadline Music responded with the explanation that they decided to rectify the mix because some of the response has been less than positive. Some complained about the overall quality of the recordings, and in particular the mix. As a result, they hired Sherwood to remix the album and explained that 2 separate versions of Frequency Unknown would be released. Now fans will be able to decide which mix they feel best represents the album: the original mix, which will be released on April 23rd, or the new mix by Billy Sherwood that will be made available at a future date to be announced. We remixed. 5 days later, he withdrew from mixing the album, citing scheduling issues. However, Cleopatra Records would later announce the release of a deluxe edition that included a bonus disc of Sherwood's complete reimagining of the album. Tracks from the album would still be remixed. Slater had previously stated on February 28, "We finished a day before the deadline. Mayor Appelbaum is mastering it, and it sounds great." On April 2, he rectified this statement by commenting, "In the end the mixes suffered. As they are the last part of the process, we didn't really have time to mix them properly. It was more of a race against the clock than a mix." Tate also confirmed that the mixes were subpar in an interview on April 13, 2013 on Access Sacramento's The Continental Breakfast Radio Show, where he stated, "We were a little rushed on the mixing end of it, but we get to go back and correct some areas in the sound where we thought it was kind of lacking." In reality, all tracks were remixed. Peter Amato remixed 4 tracks, Jurgen Engler, Die Krups, and Chris Lyotts remixed 5 tracks together, and Anthony Fox Beautiful Creatures, Fred Curry Cinderella, Glenn Fricker, Wojtek Kaczynek, and Slater each remixed 1 track. The work was spread out over several remixers because of the deadline that had to be met. The remixed version of Running Backwards included a different solo to the one by K.K. Downing on the original mix. Release. Frequency Unknown was released on Cleopatra Records, sublabel Deadline Music, on April 23, 2013 as music download, on CD and limited vinyl LP in the United States, and on May 21, 2013 as audio cassette without the re-recorded classics, and on June 3, 2013 on CD in the United States. According to Tate, the promotional budget for the album was $1,000. The first batch of CD that had the original mixes have been released in the United States, but Cleopatra has offered to send customers a replacement CD containing the remixes upon showing their receipt. Following the criticism of the album by several blogs and video blogs, Cleopatra Records launched a contest on April 26, 2013 for the best video rant on how much you hate Frequency Unknown. The winner was offered a free VIP trip to a June 29 show in Seattle. The submission deadline was set for May 10, and a 4-minute video was released on May 11 that showed a compilation of rant snippets and footage of Tate raising an intimidating eyebrow to some of the responses and laughing along to others. Critical reception. Frequency Unknown has received mixed reviews. Thom Jurek of AllMusic was mixed in his verdict, praising songs such as Cold for having an enormous Lo Cicero riff that recalls the band's glory days, describing the song's Life Without You, Fallen, and The Weight of the World as well-crafted prog metal tunes, and Slave and Running Backwards as killer rockers, but their barely present vocals and MIDI guitar sounds kill their impact. Jurek on Tate's vocals says he's still got a hell of a voice. From what we can hear of it here, but he concludes that as a whole Frequency Unknown suffers from subpar, muddy sound, which basically mars the entire record, and that the re-recordings of classic tracks were totally unnecessary. Sputnik Music staff writer Trey Spencer disagrees with Geoff Tate. Although Spencer describes how this album was doomed from the start due to all the controversy around it, he admits, "I truly hoped that all of the drama would be enough to light a fire under Geoff Tate's ass and make him enter the studio with something to prove." Frequency Unknown definitely proves a few things, but none of them are positive. It proves that Geoff is willing. William Clark from Music Enthusiast magazine similarly gave a positive review, saying Frequency Unknown is a roller coaster ride of an album. Larry Petro at NAC admits, "I was ready to skewer this thing, but I just can't. It's actually pretty good." He finds the mix spot on and calls the original songs a pretty decent rock album. In fact, this is the kind of stuff he should have been releasing as solo material all along. But he goes on to discuss the glaring blunder of the re-recorded classics, remarking that Geoff sounds like he's singing from the bottom of a well. Krista Titus from Billboard asserts that several songs deserve praise for their melodies and journey-like pace, but nothing on Frequency Unknown sounds like the finely crafted rock he designed with his former bandmates. The remainder of her review takes on a highly critical tone, in which she describes the re-recordings as sonic embarrassments and concludes with the words, "Despite his resolve to flip off the haters, the only person he screws with FU is himself." Track listing. Original 2013 release. 2014 Deluxe Edition. In 2014, Cleopatra Records released a deluxe edition that includes the original album plus the first 10 tracks remixed by Billy Sherwood. Personnel. Chart performance. Frequency Unknown sold 5,512 copies in its first week of release in the United States and reached No. 82 on the Billboard 200 chart. By comparison, Queensrÿche's album Dedicated to Chaos sold around 8,000 copies.